Good morning, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar. By way of introduction, I'm Anne Livingston, the Chair of the Queensland Government-funded Community Care Smart Assistive Technology Collaborative. I will be moderator for today's webinar titled The iPad, a Powerful Smart Assistive Technology. This webinar is part of a series of sessions being facilitated by Community Resourcing for the Community Care Smart Assistive Technology Collaborative. We've now produced over 26 webinars. These webinars have been designed from feedback and requests we have received through the collaborative. Our webinars are bringing together local, national and international perspectives in research and development, as well as focusing on the deployment of smart assistive technology in the community care sector. Community resourcing has extensive international linkages, and we've been fortunate to work with many international projects and research. We're very proud to have been awarded the National ICT Innovative Entrepreneurial Project of the Year Award at ITAC last year for this particular project. We're also particularly proud to mention that a number of our expert reference groups have been recognised in awards for their work within the collaborative. I particularly note Professor Greg Teggett being recognised in the Australian of the Year program, and Dr. Mohan Karunanithy, Dr. Eleanor Horton and myself being appointed by the Minister of Innovation, Science and the Digital Economy and the Minister for Small Business as Advanced Queensland Community Digital Champions. A very recent and exciting development for us also was that a few weeks ago we were finalists in the eHealth Queensland Startup and Innovation Showcase for a project that has emerged from the collaborative. I mentioned our expert reference group before, and our expert reference group ensures that information and activities relating to the project are of high quality and focused. I'd like to take the opportunity to highlight the work of our reference group and the project team, and particularly in respect to the amount of engagement work that has been undertaken both on the collaborative site, but also statewide, nationally and internationally. Recently we held a number of assistive technology events which engaged individuals, family members, formal and informal carers and service providers throughout regional Queensland. It was great to get out to regional Queensland and to share the possibilities and benefits that technology can deliver. Today we have again representation from every state and territory, as well as some international visitors who have been regular attendees. I particularly acknowledge these attendees who are bridging the time zones to participate. Those of you who have attended previous sessions know that community resourcing has been funded by the Queensland Government to bring together an online platform for service providers who are interested in collaborating on issues and practices related to smart assistive technology. Our project has achieved extensive national and international geographical reach, as well as nearly reaching 1,000 providers in this state to date. And this is growing daily. As many of you are aware, we're also in the final stages of revamping the platform, as well as putting together a consumer portal on the site. We have employed co-design and collaboration concepts in developing this new area, and we look forward to your feedback on this new enhancement. Please note that neither Community Resourcing or the Department of Communities, Child Safety and Disability Services are promoting or endorsing any particular product, research entity or organisation. Rather, our webinars serve to inform viewers of the examples of various smart assistive technologies in deployment and in development. As attendees at today's session, and in the interests of recording, we've muted your microphones, but we encourage you to ask questions, and these questions can be added to the question pane on the dashboard on the right of your screen. There will be an opportunity at the end of the session to have these answered. At previous sessions we have been inundated with questions, so please post your questions early to ensure we can cover it in today's session. As I mentioned earlier, in today's session we will explore how iPad can be used as an impressive and multidimensional smart assistive technology. I would like to introduce you to today's presenter, Jacqui Kirkman. Jacqui is a Brisbane-based education and accessibility consultant. She's an experienced teacher and has helped many students use assistive technology to maximise their learning. Jacqui has a Masters of Education, a graduate diploma in teaching and a Bachelor of Arts. She also holds a number of technology and education credentialing. Jacqui is a member of Apple Consultants Network and she focuses in areas of education solutions and accessibility. Jacqui was recently awarded Apple Professional Learning Specialist status. Together with her husband, Jacqui runs MPD Accessibility, which is an arm of Mac and PC doctors. This company offers assistive technology solutions and consultancy based around Apple products. Please join me in welcoming Jacqui to today's webinar. Welcome, Jacqui.
Thank you, Anne, and thank you for having me. So I guess the first question I'd like to address is why iPad? Why have we chosen to talk about iPad today? So there are a number of reasons for that. Firstly, the iPad has only been around since 2010, believe it or not, and it's really been a bit of a game changer in terms of providing a mainstream, relatively affordable accessibility device for many users. The cost, while an iPad is not something you just buy with pocket money, certainly, the cost of an iPad compared to, for example, a custom-built speech-generating device really is much less. Apple does showcase accessibility. They make a big thing of all their devices and all their products being readily accessible and providing features to let all users access them in the same way. So from that point of view, iPad is it's sort of all built in, as we'll get to see as we move on this morning. This is changing a little bit, but Apple has had the big market share of apps in the App Store. Yeah, that's changing a little bit, but in the past it's been the case that if a developer was going to produce an app, then they would produce it definitely on for Apple platforms and possibly for Android and other platforms. So it did for a long time have the market share of good available apps. That said, other devices do have built-in accessibility features as well. So if for some reason you're listening to this but not thinking about using an iPad, thinking about using a different type of tablet, then by all means, much of this is going to be relevant. Also, pretty much anything I say about iPad today is going to be relevant to iPhone. And I might just add that our session today is meant to be really sort of an overview of what is available on iPad, and there are plans to follow up with other sessions either as a webinar or in another context to get into the specifics a little bit more around different focus areas like vision, hearing, physical interaction. Okay, so first of all I would like to get a bit of jargon out of the way and practicalities. If you're familiar with the iPad and the whole Apple world, this might be something you already know, but it could be news to other people. So first of all, when you hear iOS mentioned, this means I operating system. So that's the operating system that devices like iPad and iPhone are running on. At the moment we're up to iOS 10, so there's an update every now and again with some new features in it. Accessibility is what Apple calls features that make the device usable for people with all sorts of different needs. It's similar to what we call assistive technology, same sort of idea. We'll look at some basic navigation in a little while. When you're buying an iPad, you might want to think about whether you buy it with Wi-Fi or without Wi-Fi. Probably depends on where you're going to be using it, who's going to be using it. We'll talk about that a little bit more in a bit. Also the same for cellular or no cellular. You can get an iPad that has a SIM card, that can take a SIM card and uses data, or you can get it without. Storage capacity, so iPads come in different sizes of storage capacity, and I'm going to be showing up here because they've just changed the capacities and I don't have it off the top of my head, but for example, they certainly used to come in 16 gigabytes and you couldn't fit a lot on 16 gigabytes. That's something I'll have to follow up with if somebody wants to know a lot about that, sorry. The next thing on my list is Apple Care and Apple Care Plus. So this is an insurance that Apple offers. Apple Care Plus is it's an extended warranty, I guess that's what they are, extended warranty. The beauty of Apple Care Plus is that it will also cover a broken screen, which is not normally covered. I mean, you can't break it every week within the warranty period. There is a number of times that they will cover it, but it's certainly something worth thinking about and worth asking a few more questions about if you're thinking about investing in an iPad. The App Store is the next thing on my list. That's where you find apps. That's maybe sounds a bit self-explanatory. If some people struggle with finding good apps, and I have put there and categories, because just a tip, I can perhaps demonstrate this another time in a bit more detail, but rather than just going to the top and searching, if you scroll down the page in the App Store and get to categories down towards the bottom of the page, you'll find there lists of apps that have been curated by someone working at Apple. So at least if they're in those categories, you know that somebody has looked at those apps and made a judgment about the quality of those apps. Apple ID. If you use any sort of Apple device, you will need to make an Apple ID, which is usually just your email address, and then that will carry across all your different Apple devices. So if you hear talk of Apple ID, that's what that's all about. And the last thing I've got on this little list is work versus play. So if a person is using an iPad as, for example, a communication device, and especially if this person is a child or if they have some cognitive disability, some people have chosen, their carers have chosen to get a second iPad, so that for that person there's a delineation between using the iPad for work or serious things and using the iPad for play. Because for a lot of people, I guess the iPad is a play device, which is perfectly fine, but there's just a consideration there about how you delineate work from play for some people. Alright, I've got a little screencast here which I'm going to start, and it just shows a little bit of the basic navigation around the iPad in case you're not familiar with that. So this is my home screen here of my iPad, and you can see that I have my apps. Some of my apps are arranged into folders. So when I want to open an app, I open the folder, I open the app. I go back to the home screen to get back to my menu. I'm just pausing that because I'm going so fast. If you want to get back to your home screen, you press the home button, which is the physical button on the side of the iPad. That's always the way. That's always a good thing to bear in mind. If in doubt, press the home button. It will always take you back to this home screen. If you have a number of apps on your device, they will be on sort of different pages, and you can see I'm swiping around. Here I'm opening a folder again and closing it. And now, what I've done here is I have pressed down on an app. Sorry about that. I've pressed down on an app, and it's gone, for want of a better word, it's gone wobbly. And once the little icon is wobbly, you can drag it around if you want and change its position to help you organise how you find things. If you want to put two apps together and make a folder of them, you just drag one on top of the other, as I just did, and you rename the folder to whatever you want to name it. Here I'm just calling it whatever for want of a better name. When I'm finished with all my rearranging, now here I go, I'm moving an app to another page, so just dragging it to another page because that's the page that I want it on. When I'm finished, I press the home button. This is the Spotlight search. If you swipe down on the home screen from the top of the screen with two fingers, a search comes up, and you can type in the app that you are looking for, the particular app that you know you have installed that you are looking for, and the possibilities then come up and you can choose what you want. I've just gone now into the settings, to the settings icon, and opened the settings page. We'll look at this in a lot more detail in this session, but this is just to show you where you find sort of the back room, I guess, the back way to control your different apps and things on your device. So down there on the left are all the different apps I've got installed, and then if I choose General and Accessibility, coming up now, this is where we're going to see a lot of what we do today. So different things for vision, interaction, hearing, media, learning. And back, press the home screen to get back. Okay, I think we've talked about all those jargon and practicalities. All right, so now we touched on this before. When we're thinking about what is going to be a good solution for somebody using assistive technology, I'm looking at this model by Eddie Byrne, and he says that there are 5 essential variables you have to think about when you are trying to design a solution for somebody involving assistive technology. So his 5 variables are the person, the task, the context or environment, the tool, the technology tool, and then afterwards the outcome. So if we just break that down a bit, then the first variable is the person. So what are the person's particular challenges and strengths? If we're thinking about someone with a disability, then what are they able to do? What is challenging for them to do? The task, what is it they're trying to achieve? Is it communication with people around them? Is it managing school work or work? Is it just daily living? So what is the actual task that we're trying to achieve? The context or environment. So is this assistive technology going to be used at school, at home, at work, all of them? Is there Wi-Fi available in the places where this person is often spending their time? So for example, if you are talking about a child in school, there are still many schools across Queensland, and I suspect perhaps in other states, where there is not Wi-Fi available in the classroom. So the solution is going to have to be something that doesn't require Wi-Fi all the time. Likewise, we talked a bit before about how you can get an iPad with a cellular capability. Those are not allowed in Education Queensland schools, for example. So if you had a child going into an Education Queensland school, you're not going to want to buy a device with cellular capacity because they won't be allowed to bring it. Are they in a quiet or a noisy environment? So some of the features and capabilities we're talking about require the person to be able to hear what's happening on the iPad. So if they're in a noisy background, you might need to think about headphones as well. Are they going to have support in the classroom, at the workplace, or is it something they're going to have to manage by themselves? And rules to abide by, well, we've sort of touched on that a bit. Then the technology tool, obviously cost has to be considered. The portability of it, if the person needs to take it around, if it needs to be attached to a wheelchair, whatever the person's needs are, it needs to be something that they can use, so the ease of use. And then there might be accessories as well that are needed. And the outcome is an ongoing evaluation about, once you put it in place, is it working? What sort of outcomes is it producing? And then just a little note down the bottom that iPad won't be the right solution or the whole solution for everyone, depending on their needs and their aspirations. It might be part of their solution, it just might not work for them at all. So I guess our aim really in designing an assistive technology solution is that it's involving iPad or anything else, is that it's going to run smoothly. It's going to be personalised to the person's particular needs, and as much as possible it's going to be self-operated and self-maintained. But this is not something that happens overnight, and especially if the person is going into different environments where different people have to interact with them and their device. So for example, a child who goes to school, who might also go to a speech therapist, might have some extracurricular activities. There are a lot of different people having to interact with that device. So it's not something we can expect is going to work instantly. All right, so we're going to look now at the inbuilt accessibility features regarding vision that Apple has designed to help people with low vision or people who are blind. So we will get to talking about VoiceOver a little bit in a bit more. So probably most people are familiar with Siri. Siri as personal assistant, or Siri as just information provider. So Siri is a built-in feature, and you can give Siri spoken questions or spoken directions to do things for you. If you have a more recent iPhone, or if you have an iPad Pro, you can activate what's called Hey Siri, which means you can use it without your hands at all. You can just say, if you've got it set up, you can say, Hey Siri, and ask her whatever the question is that you want answered, or the task you want done, like sending someone a text or sending someone an email. If it's for most iPads though at this stage, you will need to have it plugged into power if you want to use Hey Siri. That means just spoken interaction with Siri. I imagine that the next iPad that comes out, whenever that is, it will have Hey Siri without power, but without having to be plugged into power, but that's just speculation on my part. You certainly can, on any iPad or iPhone, activate Hey Siri by pressing the home button and holding it until Siri comes up and asks you what it is you would like her to do for you. Speak screen and speak selection basically means that you can get something read to you off the screen. You hold down on the text and ask it to, and get an option for it to speak the screen to you, speak what's on the text, speak what's on the screen. Dictation. So in most apps you can dictate what it is you want to say, most apps where there is text input, and you activate that by pressing the little microphone button on the keyboard, and you can speak rather than type. There is a zoom feature. Actually, we're going to look at these in a little bit more in my next screencast, so I might get that started. So here I am on the settings page, and we're looking at the vision, and I've gone into settings, general, accessibility, which is where we're going to spend most of our time. And you can see up the top right there it says vision, and underneath there are a number of different settings that we can turn on or off. So I'll just start my little screencast here and open up some things. So zoom, here we go. So zoom, as probably a lot of people know, you've got the possibility to with your fingers to pinch in and out just to zoom on a screen. A lot of people do that all the time just to magnify what they're looking at. You do have the option under here, under accessibility, to turn on a bigger zoom, a zoom feature, and we'll look at that in a bit more detail another time. But that's something that's pretty easy to turn on and can make a big difference. I'm just going to do, yeah, that shows us what happens when we press on the zoom. We also have the magnifier, so that lets you use the camera to magnify things, to make them things that you're looking at rather than things on the screen. Now, display accommodations here. So you have the option to invert colours. That was very quick, but you saw that when I pressed the invert colours, it inverted the colours. Here we have the choice to turn certain colour filters on and off, and depending on people's vision challenges, or this can be useful for them, or people with a degree of colour blindness, this can be useful. Going back, reduce white point is something else you can do to different degrees, and depending on people's vision challenges, this might be handy for them. Now I've gone in here into larger text. So again, as you know, you can, with your fingers, you can pinch out to make something larger. This setting here gives you the option to make it even larger, to set it even larger once larger accessibility sizes is toggled on, because if you just take the device as it is, you've got a certain degree of magnification, but this can make it even bigger if you turn this on. Going back to the other options, we've got bold text. You can, if that's useful, you can change button shapes, yeah, all sorts of things. You can choose to reduce the motion, which means that things like animations won't play if that's something that is confusing to someone with low vision. So a lot of different options there that you can toggle on and off in the settings area. Okay, so we looked at some of those things: zoom, inverting colours, adjusting font, pronunciation editor I didn't really look at there, but that that lets you modify how certain things are pronounced when you're having the screen read aloud to you, because I guess if it's something you use a lot, some of those pronunciations that Siri might come up with can really get on your nerves. I know she's not very good at pronouncing street names and things like that she doesn't know, and mostly we just put up with it, but if you use it a lot, then you may well want to change it so it doesn't really annoy you. I think in my next little screencast we're going to show a little bit of where you can access Braille and voiceover and Braille features. So just a little bit of a basic idea about what voiceover is, and I have heard one vision impaired user say that this is just amazing. She just loves this. It's a little bit hard to demo here in this setting with a screencast, but as I keep saying, we'll get into a bit more detail and perhaps do the recording a different way in a future session. Essentially what VoiceOver is that it, when it's turned on, you use your fingers across the screen, and when you are touching something on the screen, it speaks to you the text or lets you know what it is that you are touching. So it changes the operation of the screen so that you use one finger to select it, and then you double tap it to activate it. So normally if you're using an iPad in the normal mode, you just press whatever you want to press once, but when VoiceOver is activated, you press it once to activate, and then once to select and it will read to you, and then you tap it twice to activate or open whatever that app is. So VoiceOver we find in settings again, under accessibility, and then if I turn VoiceOver on, toggle it on, if you can see that, it then gives, because I don't have it set up, it gives the option to do practice, and this is so the iPad gets to recognise your voice. So you get to use your, you get some practice with how to use it basically, because it is a different way of operating. You've got some options there to change the speaking rate and things like that, whether you want pitch change. So if you're able to see that screen, you can see now that there is a dark black border around VoiceOver. So this is what the screen looks like when VoiceOver is enabled, and so now on my screen on that picture, VoiceOver has been selected, and if I wanted to turn that off now, I'd have to double tap to turn it off, because that's how I activate things when VoiceOver is on. And looking down the page here, yeah, you can see we've got some options to use a braille. We can attach a refreshable braille display, or, and again hard to demo here, we can actually use the screen as a braille, to type in braille on the screen. This one here we're just getting into too is the rotor. When you select the rotor, then and you have VoiceOver activated, it is, you use it by twisting your fingers, and you can set up in advance what you want read to you off the screen, and then you use the rotor to switch. So for example, when you're reading a screen via VoiceOver, you might just want the headings read, or you might want the headings and the links read. So the rotor is a quick way to switch between things that you want read out to you on the screen when you're in VoiceOver. Yeah, and I'm sorry that this is a bit hypothetical at the moment, but next time it'll be easier to see it all, easier to demonstrate it all. And looking down the page, as I said, you can, if we go to speech, you can choose the voice that it's going to read to you in. You can have different accents. We've got Karen, the female Australian voice there at the moment, but you can change it if that's not what you want. And I'm turning VoiceOver off here in this one, double tapping, and okay, a few more things down there, notifications, and whatever else you want to use when you're in VoiceOver. Okay, moving on to inbuilt accessibility features for hearing. Not quite as many options here, not quite as involved to demonstrate and talk about, but I guess basically FaceTime and iMessage gives option for people, deaf and hard of hearing people, to communicate, because you can either use text to communicate, or you can look at the other person if you're signing to each other. You can easily switch on under settings closed captions, and you can see in that picture there it's got some a demonstration there. You can switch between mono and audio, or change the there's a sliding scale to switch between those two. You can turn on audio descriptions. So wherever a web page or an app has audio descriptions embedded, then it will give you audio descriptions. And another possibility is vibrating and visible alerts, so that when your phone rings or you get a text message or your alarm goes off or whatever, your iPad can vibrate or it can flash. Okay, so just a bit of light relief here. This clip is made by a young man who lives on the Sunshine Coast called Christopher Hills. Christopher makes a lot of videos about his use of Apple devices and switch control, and this one he is comparing the use of a page turner and an iPad. So like a page turner, which used to be pretty much the only way for someone who couldn't turn the pages physically to be able to do it without someone else there just turning the pages for them. Okay, here we go. He's got a bit of a wicked sense of humour, has Christopher. So in that clip, he was using a switch which he was activating with his head. It was attached there to his wheelchair headrest, and he was using that to turn the pages in on his iPad. And he was looked like he was reading a book, iBooks or something in iBooks. So that's here on my list as something that is an inbuilt accessibility feature for physical and motor skills. So I've got a little screencast for that in a minute. Some other things that, features that are on the iPad, and I know that's a picture of an iPhone there, but it's pretty much the same thing. We've already talked about Siri, so this can also be useful to people with physical and motor skill challenges if they can speak a command rather than having to type it, or a request, or rather than having to type it. Dictation, again, can be easier to speak something than type it, depending on their particular strengths and challenges. Look at assistive touch and the other things in a minute. And yeah, okay, let's have a look at this little screencast here about interaction. Okay, so we're on the settings and general accessibility page again, and now we're going to look at the section that says interaction. So scrolling down to interaction, and I'm selecting switch control. So here we have option to, you can see there's a switches tab there we can press on. I'll do that in a second to show you, and then there's possibilities further down about how long, if you want to use scanning, how long before it changes to the next item that you're scanning. Again, this is quite an involved topic and something that probably needs a bit more time dedicated to it, so maybe in the future. Different options further down about how you want to use your switch. So now if I select switches, add new switch, so this is where if I had a switch like Christopher had, I could attach it there via Bluetooth. It is also possible to use the camera on the iPad as a switch, or to use the iPad screen itself as a switch if using the screen is something the person is physically capable of doing. And as I said before, you can choose how the person taps, how long it stays on one item before it moves to the next. So this, what's popping up here is called Assistive Touch, and you might have seen that on the home screen of my iPad before. So when Assistive Touch is turned on, it lets me choose a certain number of gestures or features that I want to be able to get to quickly, that I don't want to have to go into the settings screen and muck around with. And this might be because I have some physical challenges which make it difficult to get in and out of the in and out of the settings menu all the time. It might be because I have some cognitive challenges and it's hard to remember what I need to do to get different things started. So if I have Assistive Touch enabled, then this little black thing is always showing on my, it's always, what am I doing here? This little black thing is always showing on my screen. It's always showing on my screen. I can move it around, and when I press it, it gets bigger, and then I can quickly turn those things on and off again. Sorry, I'm just going to go back a little bit on this because I'm getting ahead of myself. And I'm going to go back a little bit more because I'm getting ahead of myself again. So that's what the Assistive Touch looks like when it's when I've pressed it and it's become larger, and then after a bit it goes small again, and I can move it around if I need to. The other thing I wanted to show you was back there, creating a new gesture. See, it's got the option to create a new gesture. So this is useful when you might know on an iPad you need to do particular gestures like swipe from the top to the bottom, swipe from left to right. For some people that is something that they can't do physically. So this function here lets you tell the iPad a different gesture to use that will then mean swipe left or swipe up or swipe down. So that, again, this probably requires a little bit more attention to demonstrate, but you can see at least that the possibility is there. Other possibilities for interaction are touch accommodations. So this change lets me change how long a key is held before it reacts. So for some people who have perhaps don't have great control, fine motor control, they can and they might tap something a couple of times or a few times when they only mean to tap it once. That can get around some of those problems. Or someone who is not able to touch something quickly. If they have to hold down on it for a long time, then the iPad can learn to read those their gestures a different way. And here, this is for when I've got if I have an external keyboard attached, and you can attach an external physical keyboard to an iPad, then we can do the same sort of things like key repeat, sticky keys, slow keys, that enables a person who is not able to type quickly and accurately for their gestures to be read a bit more accurately by the iPad. We've got sticky keys, slow keys. Yeah. And it shows you there where you can attach a keyboard. Okay. So now we're moving along to a different set of accessibility features, and these are designed for, well, Apple calls it learning and literacy. So this might be people with, for example, autism, ADHD, some sort of cognitive impairment, or learning difficulties such as dyslexia, So one of the big things that people, especially parents of children with autism, find useful is guided access, and that's shown there on the screen. We can go into that in a bit more detail another time, but basically what it does is it locks the user into one particular app, so they can't get out of it without a password, which obviously their carer or parent is controlling. You put a time limit on it if you want to. And that, so if a child is only meant to be using the iPad for a communication device, or if they're meant to be doing schoolwork with it, then you can lock it down into just one app. Speak screen and speak selection. They are a little bit like VoiceOver but not as involved. So as I mentioned before, basically you have the text that's on the screen read aloud to you, and that can be really useful for people for whom reading is difficult because of dyslexia or something like that. And also for some of those people even doing a search, an internet search can be difficult, because if you have trouble spelling what it is you want to search and then you have trouble reading the results, well, it's not very helpful. So in those cases they can use Siri to search for them. They can ask Siri to search. They can ask Siri to read results for them. Dictation, again, if reading and spelling are a challenge for you, you can dictate the text that you want to write. Predictive text is something that we probably all use these days on our phones when we're not even thinking about it. So that's where the phone or the iPad suggests to you what the word is that you're starting to type, and again that can be really useful if your spelling, if spelling is difficult for you. And in the latest version of iOS 10, you are now able to get feedback on what you're typing. So it will read back to you sort of in real time what you've just typed, just so you can check if that's what you really meant to type. Safari Reader can also be really useful for people who get distracted by a lot of clutter on a page. So with Safari Reader you can basically simplify what is on the page. You can get out, you can cut out ads that tend to go around the side, and a lot of unnecessary clutter that can distract some people. And so that was a very quick whiz through the learning and literacy features. And then we're getting towards the end here, but just a few other out-of-the-box accessibility features. So these are things that you don't have to pay any extra money for, you don't have to install, they're already there if you get a new iPad, and that is reminders. So you can set up reminders on your iPad, and if you have the ability then to go in and look at your reminders, well, you will see what you need to do. If you need notifications, that means you need your device to tell you when you need to do something, then that's possible too. You can set up a notification that will give you a vibration or a flash or some sort of bing to let you know that you need to do something. And you, of course, a person's carer or parent can set those up for them. You can integrate with other Apple devices, so handoff they call that too. So you know, if you're someone who has perhaps some cognitive or executive functioning difficulties, then moving from one device to another can be tricky to remember different passwords and how you get into things. So you can pretty smoothly do whatever you need to do across your different devices, and that's including Apple Watch. And the reason I mention that is that if you want a portability, well, I guess Apple Watch is the extreme there, because it's something you wear on your wrist, and it's very easy and very portable and looks the same as anything anybody else is using. And for some people it's too small and it's too difficult for you to use, but for others it's really handy to have that alert, right there, vibrating on your wrist, hard to ignore. and you can use Siri and Maps and all that sort of stuff right there on your Apple Watch. And iBooks also comes on your device out of the box, and a nice thing about iBooks, pretty much anything in the iBook store, you can have the text read aloud to you, and you can use you know, the Zoom features and things like that. So thank you for listening to me today. I'm sorry that I just spoke very fast and it was a very quick whiz through some of the possibilities, but I hope at least it gave you some idea about the potential and gave you some ideas about where you might look further, what areas you might want to look at further to see how this could be a solution for you or for some of the people that you work with. I've got a few little resources here, places that you could go to find a bit more information. So for example, AppleVis, that's a great forum for people with vision, about Apple products for vision impaired users. Yeah, and by all means, if you're interested in switch usage, have a look at Christopher Hill's other clips because, like I said, he's got quite a sense of humour. And I'm just going to finish up here before we have some questions with my contact details. If I can do anything to help you work out a solution for the people you work with, then please feel free to get in touch.
Thank you, Jacqui. Great presentation. I really thank you because now I can use my iPhone a little bit better and I'm sure others that are trying to assist their clients or family members, you've provided some really great information. We also are keen to drill down on that information, so I just mentioned to everyone if there's particular areas of interest that you would like Jacqui to specifically look at. We are going to hold some more webinars and perhaps some events where Jacqui might be available to assist people. We've got some questions coming through already. I've thank everyone for posting them and remind you to post them on the chat box that's on the right-hand pane of your screen. I've had a couple come through off the screen as well, Jacqui. So we'll get to those first, and thank you for those who are sending them through. So I've got a question from Scott. Scott's in Brisbane, so welcome, Scott. Great information, Jacqui. Most of the accessibility I think that you've mentioned is built in. Scott asks, is that true? And are there any other costs additional to those when you're buying a device that we should be aware of?
Good question. Yes, you're correct that most of, or pretty much all of that stuff we've talked about is included in the cost of the device. As I said at the beginning, you know, it's not just pocket money to buy an iPad. They're sort of in the range from $500 to $1,000 depending on what it is, how big you want. But those things that we've talked about are all included. Now, if you, for example, if you wanted to use this as a communication device with a communication app, then there would be an extra cost for that. So for some apps there will be a cost. If you want an accessory like a refreshable braille display or phone conducting headphones or switches, then there's going to be costs for those. But pretty much, yeah, everything we've talked about today comes out of the box when you get a new iPad.
Thanks, Jacqui. I've got another question here from Cynthia, and Cynthia's in far north Queensland. What would you, in your experience, Jacqui, think are the good apps that we should consider for our client group, which is younger people with a disability?
Okay, that's a big question, Cynthia, and the answer is sort of how long's a piece of string. The serious answer is it really depends on what your users' goals are, and I'm going back to that slide that I showed towards the beginning about Eddie Byrne's 5 things to consider when you're planning an assistive technology solution. So it really depends what it is they're trying to do. Are they trying to communicate? Are they trying to write? when we do some more sessions, I will mention some particular apps. But I think in the short term, in the meantime, I wouldn't necessarily advise going to that app store and just putting in, you know, communication apps or something like that, because you're going to get a huge number of results. I especially wouldn't advise putting in literacy apps or spelling apps. You're going to get a huge number of results, and some of them, it's really hard to tell the quality of those apps. So probably what I would suggest is that you actually Google or on a search engine search for something like good communication apps for young people, and you'll find that there's a lot of curated lists out there that people have made. So that'd be my first advice for looking for an app, is to Google what other people think are good apps for that particular purpose, and yeah, just see what other people have got to say, what the reviews are like of those particular apps. So I hope that's useful, Cynthia.
Thanks, Jacqui. Lana from Victoria has been emailing me as you've been speaking. So Lana, we know that you've had some problems with connectivity from your side, but Lana was asking a very practical operational question about, she was really appreciating your content, and she asked, was it going to be posted? All our webinars are posted on the collaborative site after we do a bit of editing, and so it takes us a couple of days to get the webinars up there. But Lana, you'll be able to access all the content on the site in a couple of days. But can I mention that please register for the collaborative to get access to those. It's very easy to register on the site, and we'd encourage you to do that. I've got another question on the question pane here from Diane, and Diane, a similar sort of question. She particularly wanted a screenshot of the links page, and Diane, you'll be able to access that directly when it's posted on the website. I've also had a couple of people asking about Christopher Hill's clips. Does he just do that as a voluntary thing, or is he an Apple consultant?
Christopher is an Apple consultant, and he runs, I believe it's a video editing business. So that's what he does as a job, but I think he does some of these things as well just for general information to help other people in their use of switch technology. Yeah, but he is a user of Apple devices in his video editing work.
Thank you. That's probably all we've got some time for questions at this point. If there's other questions that come through following the close of today's session, we'll take those offline and follow them up. You provided a great degree of information there, Jacqui, and it's great that we'll be able to post that soon for people to revisit the information. Again, I encourage people to give us some feedback of the areas that you want to explore further, and we'll have some webinars or activities offline to ensure that you get that sort of information that's required. So please join with me formally in thanking Jacqui for today's presentation. It was great, Jacqui, to get some really practical knowledge of how to use the equipment more robustly.
Oh, thank you for having me, Anne.
Thank you. So just a reminder to finish up that we've got a few more webinars for November. On the 10th of November, we're doing a webinar on living labs, particularly co-design and co-creation in action. We're going to feature some of the living labs around Australia and internationally, and talk to some of the participants from Australia who recently attended the European Network of Living Labs. On the 18th of November, we also are going to follow up on our transport series, and where we're going to look at smart assistive technology transforming transport services and work opportunities. This is a really important webinar to attend, and it's being presented by Uber. We've mentioned earlier that we've been going around regional Queensland. We've got a couple more road shows planned. If you're in central Western Queensland, or you want to visit central Western Queensland, which we'd always encourage you, we're going to be featuring a number of activities in February 2017. And in April we'll be in Far North Queensland. If you are service providers or families in that area, we'd love to hear from you, and we'll update you shortly on venues and specific dates. And just a reminder that a delegation is going to a study tour in Asia and through Canada in conjunction with the International Congress on Smart Homes and Health Telematics in June 2017, if you want some more information on that. I'd like to particularly thank today the Community Care Smart Assistive Technology Collaborative Project Team, and specifically thank Elizabeth Dodd for her leadership of that team. We mentioned before the members of the Expert Reference Group. They provide a lot of voluntary support to this project, and I thank them for their assistance. I'd also like to thank Gavin Tomlins from Sundale. Gavin donated some equipment for us today, and he's been emailing in the background giving us some feedback. So I think the technological equipment you donated, Gavin, has worked well according to your feedback and others that we've got today. So thank you for that. Always have to thank the funder, so thanks to the Queensland Government for their sponsorship of this activity and for putting together the platform. But today I'd like particularly to thank Jacqui for her presentation today. Jacqui, we look forward to having you back at other series as well. So thank you again.
Thank you.
Thanks everyone for their participation today. If you'd like some more information on the Smart Assistive Technology projects that we've outlined or the collaborative, please email sat@communityresourcing.com.au. Thanks everyone for your participation today.